Today I will be playing Cuphead, but every level, a random number generator gets to decide how many deaths I'm allowed before I have to spin a wheel with a variety of challenges on it. By the way, I've never played this game. So the way this works is at the start of a level, I use a random number 1 through 50, and if I get more deaths than that in the level, I do a challenge. To start out, I rolled a fairly low 15, but I was unfazed because I didn't know how hard it would truly be. I was able to beat the level, but not without much pain. So on this boss, I got 40 tries, but after round 5, I went and got an upgrade to help. While I could easily get through the first and second phase, the third is what took up most of my time. I beat this at 36 tries, but I didn't know what was to come. The third boss was probably the hardest I'd faced yet. While the first and second phase were easy and understandable to beat, the third was horrible. At the beginning, there's a slot machine throwing coins at you where you're supposed to parry the handlebar as it comes down. I had no idea, so I spent hours trying to figure this phase out. Eventually I did, and it only took me a few minutes to beat the level. Still, it was the worst level I would face in a while. But one thing I didn't mention was my lives. I rolled a 21 and went far over that. So my punishment was to eat a raw egg. This boss was fairly simple. Dodge when it jumps and move back when it punches. Yet it was still quite annoying. The first phase was pretty easy, and the second phase was just a more difficult version of that. The third was also fairly easy. This boss overall was quite simple, but given the small size of the battlefield, it gave you little room to dodge, so the direction you dodge at one point can impact your ability to dodge later. I did end up having to do a challenge for this, playing Getting Over, a notorious rage game. But I have beat it before, so it was not that hard. It took me about 2 hours to beat, so I wasn't annoyed, but I still beat it that stream with no problem. This boss was terrible. It was fairly easy until about halfway through. The first half, you're met by a transforming plane who becomes a lamb and then switches back to the transforming plane. Occasionally, you're met by an unexpected attack, but for the most part, it's not bad. The second half is incredibly hard. You either have to face off against an enemy with a bow and arrow or twin angels. You then have to face off against a moon with weird and hard to understand attack patterns. Overall, this was not the worst boss so far, but not far from it either. I did end up doing a challenge for this, ripping duct tape off my arm, which to be honest, was the easiest one yet. When watching someone beat this level, it seems quite easy, but what you don't realize is that in this level, there's a section where everything is incredibly complicated compared to how it looks, and I came to the harsh reality of that after just a few tries. The first section was pretty easy, you just have to get good timing on a few moves. But the second one is quite annoying. The idea of it is that there are logs and bees that can attack you. You can shoot them back, but I didn't know that for a while. I won't really focus on that though. While a simple stage, it does not take long to realize how many bad situations you can get into. For example, when you're stuck on a platform being shot at, you have a bee above you. To anyone who's gone through that pain, my condolences. So after beating this section, I got through the third section fairly easily in just a few attempts, and I beat the level. But still, it was worse than any other level yet. I ended up having to eat cat food as a challenge. To be honest, my experience with this boss was not horrible. I started with 44 tries, and each try just got better and better. Eventually, I reached the final phase, where I did struggle quite a bit, but the problem is not with the difficulty, as it only took me a few decent tries to beat it, but the inconsistency. What I mean by this is that I would die or lose too much health before I got here. As for the phase itself, and the battle, I mostly died these annoying floaty orbs. Eventually I did get a good run and beat the boss.
This meant that I had completed Inkwell Isle 1, the first section of the game. So I went to the shop and picked up a new gun, and then I proceeded to the next section, Inkwell Isle 2. I went into the next boss with 15 tries, knowing I wouldn't be able to complete it. So when I hit 15 tries, my punishment was to complete the boss twice. To be honest, this wasn't that bad. It was the first boss that I genuinely found fun, even after putting multiple tries into it. I left the arena and proceeded to the next level, a running gun. The first phase was pretty simple, just some basic and annoying platforming. The second was unpredictable, but with a little luck I could beat it. I didn't have many problems with the final section as it only took me a couple tries, but given that I only had 12 tries to beat this level, I did have to do a challenge, and that was just to beat the next level twice, so nothing immediate. Whether it was RNG hell, stupidity, or just lack of practice, this boss was atrocious. The first part was easy, the second was much harder, but still you could beat it with practice. The third was hard to start out with, but that's assuming that RNG is in your favor. If it's not, I'm afraid you'll be back to the first phase soon enough. Up until here, everything was child's play, but now, at the final phase, the true challenge begins. To start, you're just jumping on platforms while a train goes under you, but after that you get attacked by frogs. After enough of this you die, but if you put in enough damage, you might still die, but you could win, and that's what I had to do. Twice. Needless to say, after enough time and suffering, I beat it and moved on to the next boss. This was hard. Harder than the clown, harder than the frogs, harder than the plane, harder than everyone. And yet I was still dumb enough to try. The first phase was pretty easy. The only problem was its length. The second phase was the hard part. The only attack is these midget fireballs trying to jump you, but it's still completely undoable. If you somehow get past this part, the dragon then grows an extra 2 heads and starts spitting fireballs at you. It then uses a blowtorch and raises your heart rate by about 300. If you're one of the few stupid people who decide to beat this, assuming you're not in cardiac arrest from sweating too hard, you have earned yourself a soul contract. As a challenge, I had to rip duct tape off my arm, but I didn't have my camera on at that point, so I'll just do it again right now. After this, I went to Wally Warble. Wally isn't too hard, but I found some magic power that doubles my health until the next victory. I was stupid and ended up doing a challenge because I didn't know the plane could switch weapons. I had to beat it twice, but I found out about the weapon swap and quickly extinguished the fight. I went on to the final boss I would have to complete in this section, Djimi the Great. He was decently hard and I didn't get many attempts, so I had to do a challenge. Specifically, the 1-chip challenge. To put this into perspective, normal jalapeno has 2,500 to 8,000 Scoville units. This chip has 1.5 million. Now I wouldn't eat the whole thing, so I had maybe around 250,000 Scoville units, but this was still quite hot. It wasn't really as bad as I thought it would be. It was painful, but it only lasted around half an hour before all of it was gone. This is only because of how little I ate. If I'd eaten the whole thing, I would be dying. I finished Djimi and went on to Inkwell Isle 3, the longest section of the game. The first boss that I fought was Captain Brinybeard. He wasn't hard, but I only got 2 tries, so you can probably guess how that went. I occasionally got hit with some bad RNG in the beginning, but the third is what took up most of my deaths. My challenge for this was to hold my hands in a bowl of ice for a minute. I thought it would be easy, but I was desperately wrong. I needed to take my hands out multiple times during it, but I made sure to make up for that time by going past the timer I'd set. I beat the captain and went on to the worst running gun yet, Perilous Pier. I got 37 tries, a good amount, but not good enough. The first part was pretty easy, the second wasn't much different, but the third is where it got hard. I would usually take 2 hits here, leaving me with 1 HP for the final part. Once I moved on to this, I had to continuously parry and dodge projectiles, while on the head of a small octopus. Eventually I beat it and moved on to Rumor Honeybottoms. This boss is undebatably hard but still doable. The first phase consists of a large bee throwing bombs at you. The second phase has 3 parts. The first one has triangles shooting at you. The second has large purple balls that you have to parry. In the last section, the bee's head goes down and you get shot with missiles. Once you get to the third phase, you'll be greeted by homing boxing gloves and huge razors. Unsurprisingly, I had to do a challenge. After this, I quickly beat the next running gun and moved on to Dr. Call's robot. I thought that this wouldn't be that bad. That it would be like any other fight. That it would be fair. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong. The first phase, you have to dodge so much that you can barely be on the field. I would die so fast, people thought I was James Charles. Once in a while, I would get past her into the second phase, which wasn't that hard, so I could get to the third phase. This man has so many bullets that he doesn't need to aim. If he takes damage, no problem, he can just throw an electric gate at you. But after too much time, this happened.
But a while later, I had this hallucination that the screen said knockout, except it was real. As a challenge, I banned 2 items, the extra heart and the P. Sugar charm. After this, I went and tried my luck at Maria. This boss was a nice change of pace, a break of difficulty. I went in with 50 tries and came out with 26 left. The first few parts had some basic bullet hell type attacks, then she gains the ability to turn you to stone. Not devastating, but a little annoying. After I won, I decided to fight Sally's stage play, who wasn't that hard, but wasn't easy either. The first phase was pretty easy once you learn the attack patterns, but the second phase is different. It's impossible to get down consistently, but on the occasion where I do get past here, the rest of the fight isn't very hard. The final phase is pretty predictable, and the attacks aren't difficult to dodge. But I did have to do a challenge. This was to beat the first running gun, but with a bunch of disadvantages. It wasn't horrible, but it did take a while. I finished up and moved on to Werner Warman. This was pretty easy. The third phase had some annoying attacks, but for the most part, it was just getting the right run. I got 7 tries, so I had to do a challenge, and I had to drink hot sauce. It wasn't even that spicy, but it just tasted bad. Either way, I won and went on to Phantom Train, the final boss in Inkwell Isle 3. To start out, the first phase has you shooting eyeballs, but at the same time, you have to parry these pink bars raining upon you. The second phase is completely RNG based. It's luck whether or not this head thing lands above you. The third phase just has you switching sides the whole time, while lollipops shoot lightning at you. And the final phase is just dodging and parrying for a while. Overall, it was a tough boss, but not horrible. I had to eat chili powder as a challenge, but then I won and went on to King Dice, the second to last boss. This was painful. It could be rolling at the wrong time and having to restart. It could be taking stupid damage, or even dashing right into his hand. No matter the circumstances, this boss was horrible. I was supposed to defeat a series of bosses and then fight the real King Dice, so I devised a route. I would fight bosses 2, 4, and 9, but any damage was punishing. When I got to the final part, I would keep on dying, but with enough practice, I won. As a challenge, I had to drink olive oil, and this was a lot worse than I thought it would be. Finally, as we reach the end, only one more challenge stands before us. Satan himself, the final boss. I get into the fight and start shooting. He has a lot of attacks, so get ready. First is the hand clap attack, then the dragon attack. Next is 3 different variations of this ball attack. And lastly, he can turn into a spider. Not to mention, he has minions running around at all times. The second phase has poker chips falling down, while you are getting bombs thrown at you, or harassed by spinning axes. The third phase is these skulls flying around, some purple dragons, and whatever these are. Now the final phase has one singular platform, with poker chips falling on it. If you can get past here, you're done. That's what I had to do. And I did, so that's it. This is where the story ends. But I had to do a challenge. This time, I chose it. Exposing my death count.